Hello, this is Samo Guy in Hawaii, and this is an overview of 4 builds or build strategies using the Sleeping Giant SMG, one for each Vault Hunter. 2 are actually updates to previous builds. This is not a detailed build video, but more of an overview of the basic mechanics plus specific concerns surrounding each Vault Hunter. I'll tell you how to set things up and what to be mindful of, but leave the rest to you. Now the gun is a world drop, but has an increased chance to drop from one punch located in Electricity on Promethea. Its special ability is the chance to boost any or all of its stats upon reloading. Its base stats were unremarkable, and the boost too random to make it viable until a buff on October 15th of 2020, which happened during the middle of that year's Bloody Harvest event. Damage and mag size increased, but just as importantly, reloading received a 1 in 3 chance to max all bonuses at once. So the key to taking advantage of the Sleeping Giant is ammo regeneration. If we can cycle reloading till we max out all stats, most importantly damage and rate of fire, and then avoid reloading, we can do enjoyably devastating single target damage, which looks like this. I mean, seriously, how could you not want to do this? Okay, so there are 2 ways to generate ammo quickly enough to avoid reloading. One is Terra, the other is BMOZ. Okay, back in October or early November of 2020, I came up with first an Amara and then a flak build that used Terra ammo regen and the Sleeping Giant. I was working on Moze and Zane when Gearbox nerfed Amara's ASC Fake Grass and, more importantly, accidentally broke ASC Terra Regeneration. This made the flak build harder to play and the Amara one impossible, and put the other 2 projects on hold. Okay. The Gearbox eventually fixed ASC Terra Regeneration, so we're back. Okay. We'll start with the weapon first, then Terra ammo regen needs and mechanics for all but Moze, as well as individual Vault Hunter concerns. Okay. So Sleeping Giants only come in fire, shock, corrosion, and non-elemental variants. For all builds, we want single-shot elemental variants with the larger 50 or 55 round magazines. Avoid the ×2 variants, which consume 2 ammo per shot, and smaller mags, both of which decrease our ability to maintain continuous fire without reloading. Okay. Weapon elements should be paired with ASC next to mags elemental damage anointments, both matching and different elements. So look for shock plus ASC fire, shock plus ASC corrosion, shock plus ASC shock. Same for fire and corrosion weapons. Additionally, elemental variants with the URAD anointment can be used if paired with a front-loaded shield or other health reduction setup. Which gun and anointment elemental pairs we actually select will depend on the situation. Either takedown, for instance, is best tackled with a corrosion shock setup, although I prefer corrosion radiation, as this maximizes damage against all targets to include some that are resistant to even immune to some elements. Okay. For something like Psycho Reaver, we equip a fire weapon with next to max fire. I think you get the idea. Okay. Now, aside from these big boss considerations, we don't have to worry too much about optimizing for specific individual damage bars. Okay. The buff Sleeping Giant puts out so much DPS that it doesn't matter. We also need to take skills or gear that increase magazine size. 50 or 55 is not bad, but to really run this setup without accidentally reloading, which is bad, we need to get our practical magazine size up above 70 and preferably a lot higher. Anything less than 90 bothers me. So grab appropriate mag size increasing skills and select for comms and or artifacts with the magazine size passives wherever we can. Now, the normal routine is to fire on the Jack Dummy in Sanctuary, reload, and repeat until we are sure we have maxed out rate of fire and damage. Damage can be boosted to 2.5 or 5 times, so look for numbers 5 times the base. Okay. Max rate of fire is achieved when we hear a very distinctive buzzsaw sound. Okay, here's normal, and here's the buzzsaw. Once we get both stats maxed, we are good to go. The buffs hold through fast travel and only reset if we reload, swap weapons, or save quit reload. Okay. Now, prior to or once in combat, if we're using Terra, we need to apply it and continue to apply it to keep up ammo regen as we fire. Okay, if we're using Moses Green Tree, it's a little simpler. We'll come back to this in a bit. Now, depending on actual magazine size and rate of fire, though, we still need to keep an eye on our actual remaining ammo. We can't just hold down the trigger. If we're getting close to empty, we need to ease off. And this will happen if we try and hold down the trigger, because the ammo regen mechanics of Terra or Moze still aren't fast enough to keep up with continuous fire. Okay? So we want to avoid accidentally reloading in order to maintain our bonuses. With this in mind, I recommend only equipping the weapon best suited to handle the expected opposition. I strongly suggest keeping the other 3 weapon slots empty to avoid accidentally switching weapons. I'd also suggest remapping the reload button for PC players, lest we hit it accidentally. I did that months ago and have gotten used to its new spot. Lastly, what do we do if we accidentally reload? Because it will happen, trust me. The chance to max out all stats is 1 in 3. So fire a good burst, at least a full second, because the buffs don't kick in immediately. If we don't hear the buzzsaw, reload and repeat. Keep doing this while trying not to die until we hear the buzzsaw, and then start shooting enemies again. The odds are high, 1 in 3, that if the rate of fire is maxed out, so is the damage. Okay? And if it's not, we'll see it immediately when things don't die as fast. And in that case, reload and repeat till we get the right mix, or we die. Okay. By the way, one further complication to that scenario: if Terra is still in effect, or if we've taken Forge with Moze, and we don't hit reload fast enough after that burst, either mechanic can refill the magazine before we can reload, thus preventing reloading. This is another reason to fire off a burst of at least a second or more, so that ammo regen doesn't actually get in the way of our fixing the problem. Okay. So that's the gun and the routine. Pick the right gun for the opposition, max out the bonuses, apply AAC Terra if needed, and fire away. Always keeping an eye on ammo remaining in the magazine. Okay. And practice dealing with accidental reloading in our spare time. Now let's talk about ammo regen and the individual vault hunters. With everyone but Moze, we need to generate Terra, and we need to generate Terra ammo regen. Okay. Grenades with AAC generate Terra anoints are best, with a Terra ammo regen anoint on a shield providing the ammo regeneration. Per the description, on the action skill end, Terra is applied once every 3 seconds for about 18 seconds, although it may be more like 15 seconds. 3 applications of Terra max out both Terra and the ammo regen mechanic. This happens in 7 seconds, after which we only need to reactivate AAC Terra again before the first activation expires. In any case, to be safe, we need a setup that allows us to activate our action skill at least about once every 15 seconds or less. Let me restate that for emphasis. 3 of 4 Vault Hunters must be able to activate their action skills roughly every 15 seconds or less for the mechanic to work. Okay. With Amara, Phase Flare and even Phase Slam have excessive cooldown times. Okay, so those are out. Phase Grass and Phase Cast can both work, but we need to do spec and use gear to get under that 15-second deadline, which is very doable. Rest can be very important, reduce the cooldown, and even Avatar. Okay, I favor Phase Grass and Ties That Bind because it has the shortest cooldown to begin with, and it spreads our Sleeping Giant damage around to other targets. But there are 2 issues with this. First, we have to be careful when entering combat to grasp and kill a target, and then let AAC Terra and the ammo regen ramp up before letting loose. We can't proc Terra before we start shooting. We have to use Phase Grass first and then end the skill, and then Terra will proc. Okay, we need to be much more careful about ammo usage when first engaging a mob. Second, Phase Grass will not proc ASC anointments at all, including Terra, if the target is grasp immune. I consider this a bug that Gearbox really needs to address, especially since they took away ASC Fake Grass. This means any boss fight with little or no adds to grasp and kill, we can't proc Terra. Until Gearbox fixes this, we need to use Phase Cast instead, although with longer base cooldown times, we really need to spec appropriately and make careful use of Avatar to ensure constant Terra. In this regard, though, Phase Cast actually works well enough, and Ties That Bind is not as important in a boss fight, but it would be nice if Gearbox fixes the grasping issue. SMR. With Zane, the obvious choice is his shoulder cannon. His is the easiest setup from a Terra ammo regen standpoint. As for other skills, be wary of ones that increase rate of fire. Not saying don't take them, just remember to watch the remaining ammo in the magazine. The green tree with its crowd emphasis can be amazing with a cheap Sleeping Giant setup. As long as we maintain our Terra ammo regen setup, there's a lot of potential variety with Zane. Now, I use a Hustler comm as it basically gives Zane Mega War, but Seeing Dead is still a go-to, and there are undoubtedly other comms that will work. One FYI, Double Barrel does not pass on our reload bonuses to the clone. The clone always fires a Sleeping Giant with no bonuses. Most of the Sleeping Giant Zane builds I played with don't even go into the red tree, although I have tried it. Okay, there are still good skills with that benefit a Sleeping Giant built in that tree though. The capstone though is a waste. Okay, now with Flak, Rack Attack would appear to be the natural choice, but that's actually not the case. Based on my experience, it doesn't provide enough protection for an already fragile character. Every time I've tried doing this with Rack Attack, I've invariably run into mobs that hit too hard and too often to stay up enough to keep Terror up. Okay. I've had great success, however, with Fade Away, especially when paired with Not My Circus, which keeps a lot of enemies away from us during cooldown. Then there's Head Count and Megavore, a natural combo for the Sleeping Giant. We crit more often, meaning we cool down faster and back into Fade Away. It's important to remember that the main point of Fade Away here is proccing ASE Terra. Okay? Do not waste time trying to target those 3 Fade Away auto crits. Okay? If you don't have a target handy, just fire them off. Okay? Now, if we're going the Moze route, the Gunner has no quick turnaround skills to proc ASEs unless we really want to keep getting in and out of Iron Bear, but she doesn't need it with her green tree. Spec the skills that regen ammo and increase mag size to include obviously the capstone, and then again, keep an eye on remaining ammo in the magazine. Now, not needing Terra also frees her up to take other anointments on her shield and grenade. Now, we still need to activate and then end our action skill to get the next 2 mags element to proc. But as long as we don't reload in combat, we can jump in and then back out of Iron Bear once before combat and take care of that. Okay. Aside from that, we don't need to use Iron Bear at all. However, even if we don't depend on it as part of our combat cycle, Iron Bear with Some for the Road is actually a great option for times when our ammo counter is getting low, but we can't afford to or we don't want to ease off on rate of fire to let it climb back up. Okay, we jump in and right back out. The mag continues to refill while we're doing that, and for 5 seconds after we exit, even while we hold down the trigger. Okay. So a Sleeping Giant build benefits from all the usual Gunner perks except splash damage because the Sleeping Giant doesn't do splash. Properly spec though, we can add a lot of fire damage to whatever the Sleeping Giant doles out. Sleeping Giant setups can synergize well with Bear Cub. The only thing we really can't utilize is Short Fuse. Speccing all the way down the blue tree to get it is not really worth the effort if we're not using Iron Bear. And that's more into detail than we need to know for Moze. Okay. One last thing on skills and tactics. Regardless of individual survivability, these builds put out so much DPS that as long as ads are around, going to fight for your life is not an issue. This will normally get you right back up. Now, lone bosses may require adjustments. I will leave that to you. And that's it. Except, of course, where to get Terra gear now that the Bloody Harvest is over. To that end, I have provided a save file linked in the comments below. It has a variety of Terra anointed shield and grenades, some comms and artifacts, and not a few Sleeping Giants to get you started. The Moze build as equipped is a variant of Salakog Wolf's Mozenator build. Very hard to kill. And holy crap, that's 2 videos in almost a week, a little more than a week, I don't know. Thanks for watching.